I've speeded my delivery by days. And suddenly everyone gets interested in deploying automation. Now, they all either build their own setups or the governance goes haywire. So defining a process, whether it is a center of excellence team at a larger level within the organization, or it's a center of excellence team within each business unit, it's very important. Roles and responsibilities. Also, another thing is the fallback plan. So in case you go live or you start your pilot, you need to know if the pilot doesn't work, you have a very rock solid fallback plan. Don't change everything in the get-go. See if things work and then slowly go into automation. Because remember, this is not just a technology change. This is a fundamental cultural change within the organization. Communication and analyzing results on a regular basis. This whole process here, folks, on the slide is a very cyclic process, right? So this is another big learning that we have. Governance and maintenance with all these items that are on the slide is key to success. Next slide.
So if I can, before just can I quickly jump in?
Yes.
I think it is a very important slide, and I want to basically make a relation between the slide here and the opinion poll question which we got in front of our screen, right?
Yeah.
So when do you think is the right time to set up the governance and roles and responsibility between 0 to 10 bots, 10 to 100? Like, when is the right indication? The question I ask is that some organization, they spend considerable amount of time in getting the governance and target operating model right before they get the first bot into production. Whereas some I've seen, they are more into, try fast mode, let's do it, let's get to a particular point and then go about setting up these sort of, the peripheral around it. So in your view, with your experience with the customers, what is the general trend which you have seen?
Really, so it depends on two things, Sumit. One is the appetite in the organization. We have seen extremely large organizations where we have buy-in from the CEO and the CEO is driving automation. The governance is set up the day the journey starts, right? And that defines success for such a large organization. Smaller organizations, actually defining governance and maintenance of bots very early would impede the speed. So if you are a mid-sized organization, do it, set up your governance model once you're crossing business units. That's a great time. And typically a 3-month cycle is when one business unit completes a successful rollout of a couple of processes and then other business units start adopting. Perfect time to set up a governance model. And for larger organizations, you should start at the get-go.
That's a very interesting point, and I think it's important for our audience to realize that, because as you start, so when you're starting your automation journey, you're nimble because you want to, and smaller organizations and even the large organizations, relatively we are nimble, right? As the TOM, which is target operating model, starts to come through, there could be additional cost which needs to be considered while you're building through, right? I think that feeds into the ROI. I think that needs to be looked at upon.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. I think I'm just going to keep interrupting if I find something. That's okay with you, I guess.
Sure. Absolutely, sir. Next slide, please. Now, sustaining and maintaining. Again, this is a very important part, and share with you one of our customers. They started their journey in a non-IT business unit, right? So it's in, I think it was in finance, if I'm not mistaken. And everything was going good, fantastic ROI. But then what happened is one of their systems was transformed, meaning it was not a generic upgrade. One of their CRMs went through a massive change and everything came down. So from a technology and best practices angle, as part of the governance and maintenance mode, whether it is part of your center of excellence team for automation, there has to be some strict adherence in the technical side, which you and the IT team have to together define and work on, which is basic backup and maintenance, testing, disaster recovery. And in such cases, today, in our current situation, unfortunately, for BCP, a lot of organizations are moving things to the cloud, right? Because they did not anticipate their in-house data center to have such a load. So they're starting to move to the cloud. Is the DR tested, or are we going to start testing it now that we're in BCP mode? So even in the case of automation, these basic tenets of technology have to be kept in mind. Another thing is process. Now processes will change. They change due to regulatory reasons. They change because your system changes. Before those massive changes are actually filtered down, ensure that your automation cycle also takes care of these process changes. Regulatory changes on the finance side happen multiple times. How are you ensuring that some changes in GST, your bot is actually also taken care of as part of the process? So these things again have to be kept in mind as we progress on the journey. Very important.
How important it is to become part of the IT change management. What we have seen in large scale deployment is that if you're not part of the change management with what IT has defined, many a times you may miss the application changes which will result into bot malfunctioning or not responding, right? So have you seen within your experience with the customers that some good practice of being part of the change management so the change is seamless whenever there is application changes coming through?
Absolutely. And, the IT function has become an enabling function, right? So they bring in their experience with, these are the technology options. They understand the requirements from the business and subject matter experts. And together they define how the company is run and how to make this company successful. Automation is exactly one of those technologies. But what is interesting with automation is it touches so many systems within the organization. And it touches people as well. And it touches process as well. So change management within IT actually has to be governed through a model where the business and the functional units are integral part of that decision-making process and the change management process. And that's really what's successful, but it's not special with automation. I think that applies to any, large technology that the company is adopting.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing that you said it really well, that it is not part specific to automation. And that's the whole point. If we can become part of the existing change management process, then the change management within change management is not required because you're not introducing any new steps to manage help the bots, right? So
good point. So yes, key takeaway, integrate within your existing change management process. Absolutely. Perfect. Next slide, please. Great. So this is your models, right? What are the possible models that work for your organization? And defining this model is important depending on the size of your organization. So certain large organizations actually have operating models at a business unit level because they're so large, the business unit themselves have P&Ls to manage. They have their own IT functions. And at a business unit level, you can really run this whole automation journey independently. Then there is the centralized model, smaller companies who have a single IT team and a lot of businesses working with that IT team have a centralized model of center of excellence. But what has worked best in our experience working with so many customers is the federated model, a model where you have experts from the business side and from the technology side working with a center of excellence team who has automation experts. So experts who are actually continuously looking out there and understanding how do I integrate, for example, artificial intelligence capabilities into my automation journey. And, I'm using the generic word automation. I'm not using intelligent automation or robotic process automation. It's automation. It's automation of technology. And for that, you can use so many adjunct technologies. So having a center of excellence who's becoming an expert in this really benefits the organization because you can really proliferate across businesses. Next slide, please. Now I will share with you what not to do. So these are sort of learnings, folks, and it's great if you haven't seen something like this because at least you won't commit the same mistakes, right? So not choosing the right process. I gave you an example. People start with the most complex process and for some reason they want to prove that I can bring in artificial intelligence, I can, bring in machine learning and I'm going to build a robot in my company. And that's not the point, right? Look at your goal. Your goal is to reduce complexity, reduce time to market, reduce the number of errors, increase compliance. Meet that goal first. Choose the right process. Thinking short term, I'm going to I'm going to make my decision on implementation partner and technology partner based on 10, 15, 20 bots. And suddenly you realize everyone in the company wants to start automation and you have to choose a new vendor. So think long term. Using the wrong automation solution. Don't fit technology into the process. Define the process, identify stakeholders, results of the process, and then insert your technology. Then things go very smoothly. And lastly, not doing maintenance and governance. I think this is basic. We've spoken about that. I won't elaborate. But you don't want everyone in the company to be building bots and automating whatever they can. Create a model. Because what we have seen in certain large companies, we get a call from one side of the company, we get a call from the other side of the company, and sometimes they're not talking to each other because there's no centralized entity who is ensuring that there is a definition of how to build automation. So have a maintenance and governance model would be my last thought to do. So that was my last slide, Sumit and folks.
No,
And
not yet. No, not yet. I've got a point there. I'm going to ask to go back to the previous slide, connecting with the last point, not setting a model of maintenance and governance. And this topic of setting up COE, as you know, Sapna, is very close to my heart, right?
Right. You're the guru. Yes.
No. So I think it's interesting to exchange the thoughts here from our experience perspective. And I'm going to talk about, a few fears which I have seen when you move from being a centralized to a more federated one, right? A center of excellence. Now, if you look at, again, the opinion poll, we got around 21% of the audience. They have got over 100 bots, which means that they are in a mature state to have a really solid center of excellence, right, being there. And certainly the scaling happens, in my experience, and as you also suggested, when you federate it, when you democratize it, that's when the footprint increases.
Right.
But that brings an underlying challenge as well. The challenge of losing control, that second challenge of not being standard in the way you're building the bots, the challenge of the bots being sensitive to any change because, there is no framework, not many a times framework is being followed, right? And when you get to say around 200 bots, you start to lose, the engine starts to make noise and things start, and you're more into fixing mode rather than doing mode, right? What are your views and what you have seen with the other organizations in that scenario?
So I'll give you an example of a very recent large organization that we worked with. And I really thought this model was very good, very interesting, because they had a couple of things which I thought as best practices we all can learn. One is defining a roadmap and prioritizing that roadmap based on ROI per function. So the automation roadmap actually went across supply chain, operations, finance, and HR as well. And what was most important to that organization at that time in their business strategy and the market conditions was attrition was one of their biggest problems. And they were trying to understand why. And believe it or not, HR got a large portion of the automation time, if you will, for deploying the bot. So defining your priorities, defining an automation roadmap is very important as you progress through the automation journey. Even if you start with one business unit, have a roadmap well defined. So even if you get to the 200 bot mark, the lethargy doesn't set in and you're able to progress further. In parallel, if you follow good governance on the get-go of, for example, small things, right? When you define bots, can you define reusable portions of the bot so that your time to deploy reduces? Can you use ready-made bots which have actually gone through a whole security cycle directly into your implementation? A lot of things to consider. These are some of the very useful things that this company is doing.
That's interesting. And that leads to next part, right? When you've got, say, 100 plus bots, I think the ratio of build the bots versus maintain the bots starts to tilt, that because you might eventually your pipes start to dry up, but but you got more bots to maintain than the new bots which are coming through, right? And as a role of COE, have you seen that the team gets divided into, in building the bots versus running the bots, or the building the bots goes with the COE and the running the bots goes with the businesses where bots are being deployed? So what are the themes you have seen?
So it's how you proliferate the expertise within the organization. Now, my background, I come from a product development company. Most of my career I've been in product development, and it was classic where products, there was always a roadmap for the product, and there was a set of engineers who are constantly working on driving the product. Similarly, a set of engineers, depending on the complexity of the bots, or process owners, subject matter experts who are part of the COE, really ensuring that the automation roadmap is on a continuous model. But there has to be a set of people who are maintaining. Now, is this maintenance, your question was, is it limited to the COE or is it typically sent to the business unit? In a federated model, these same people are part of the COE organization, and hence they would know how to maintain these bots. They would also be able to create governance around them, especially if processes change over time. So that's really when we see a lot of churn in existing bots and maintaining these bots. A lot of the times the exception cases are not well defined. Another reason people have to go back and program a number of times.
That's great. No, that's interesting. And I think with that point, we'll move to the next section. Thank you, Sapna, for taking us through this deep dive. I think we have just started to heat up. We got interesting, more deeper Q&A section coming just after the poll. So if we can bring up the next polling questions, that will be great. And in the meantime, while you're responding to the polling question, if you've got any other questions, there is a section available on your screen. Please put that through, and we will take a few questions. The question we have here is, what is most important for you in achieving results for automation? Increase productivity, improve quality and compliance, higher customer satisfaction, greater speed, reduce staffing. And we'll be talking about this because, Sapna, this is a very important point. It's not only about building the bots, right? It's about providing value to the customer. So what does it mean? So I'll be very keen on seeing what our attendees look for when, what they want to achieve in their automation journey.
Yes, this is one of those very important points to clarify early is why am I doing automation? Automation is not an answer to digital transformation.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So often, unfortunately, it's confused. And I take again our current scenario, Sumit. We are working with customers today who are really stressed because, especially the IT team, PCP they had a very nice document defined and everything would work and all the processes were defined. But it's instantaneous, thousands of employees working from home. I need to get this working, right? So it's automation is now suddenly being thought of as a fix it. So thinking long-term, thinking strategically, very important, and defining, for example, the reason for automation could be BCP is one reason to do automation, right? That's one way I need to keep the lights on. So I'd be very curious to see the results.
Yeah. Can we have the results, please? So what do we have? Increased productivity is 45%. Improved quality and compliance is 19%. Higher customer satisfaction is 24%. It's good to see that it's shifting towards being customer-centric rather than just productivity. Greater speed and reduced staffing. So it's amazing how when automation started was more reduced staffing was more on the cost saves was the main criteria, but the maturity is shifting. It's really interesting to see. And we'll talk on this in our next section. On that, can we have the next question, please? So direct question, what is the critical challenges faced by you in your automation journey? And I think if I can see the options, you have covered almost all of them in ability to scale, process identification, ROI justification, tech vendor selection, and not yet started. So it will be again Good to see. And then maybe the next section we can focus depending on what sort of answers we get from this polling question. According to you, Sapna, which is the biggest one? Where do you see the max? And let me see when the result comes, it's matching with what you are seeing and what these are saying. Just putting you in the spot right now.
So, it's if I were to give a percentage, and you'll be surprised, people struggle with
Give it top two. Give it top two.
Top two is process identification, because unless you identify the right process, you can't do an ROI justification. So it's sort of mixed. And then technology vendor. People tend to sometimes think short term rather than long term. So really choosing a good partner, both from a technology and implementation perspective, I think is the second biggest issue.
The second one is not because we are from automation anyway. That's genuine a problem, right?
No, it's genuinely. I'm not that.
Okay. On that note, can we have the results, please? Let's see. Okay, so ROI justification, process identification. I think you picked up on ROI and process together, and tech vendor is least of the concern. So 50% is matching.
Okay.
That's good. That's good. So I think I thought so. The way I will structure this webinar is that we'll have certain one section after that, but we have been very agile as we would like to be. So I'll pick few questions as we go now from our audience. But I've got a few of my own, so I'll take the liberty of asking those because I prepared a few last night. And so I think I'm going to ask you on those questions. So one thing which you did mention about having the right business sponsor in your presentation, right? Now, what I've seen is that many a times the automation could be technology-led. In that case, you need to find the business sponsor, or it is business-led and you need to find your tech partner.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So do you think, is there any right or wrong? And do you think what could be the best approach? Because it could be in the either side of the court.
I'll tell you what honestly governs that approach. Who has the budget, right? And it's a you might think it's a very crude answer, but it's important, and I'll tell you why. It's not just who has the money bags, but there's a reason why they have the money bags, because they have a problem to solve, right? So if you look at automation as a solution to solve a problem, and then it makes sense. So if the problem is with a business unit, IT is an enabler, is a partner function, and they have to work with that business unit, and together they solve the problem for the company. Whether it is the fact that they're not able to meet, not able to do taxes in time, or not able to close their ledgers in time, or customer satisfaction is going down, and hence IT comes to the rescue with automation to help drive higher customer satisfaction. So the problem area is really around IT. IT themselves definitely have a lot of scope for automation. But again, budgets typically lie with the other business units.
Well, that's interesting. So I think you spoke about the customer centric. So it's not about building the number of bots is the success criteria, right? That is a consequence of responding to your customer needs, and that will lead to those numbers we saw 0, 100, 150 and all, right?
Right. We have very good successful deployments of our attended automation. And honestly, why it's satisfying to automation anywhere is we help that company up their customer satisfaction. Their customer retention went up because we were able to help them solve problems faster. We were able to help them drive higher revenue and upsell. So it was a positive in all ways, and they partnered well with IT.
And that's great. And when you talk about partnership, right, it's when you start your journey, what I've seen is in few organizations, it's completely either they're doing it everything on their own, or they are partnering with the service providers, right? Is there any good mix there? Is anything which is like having done centralized? Like when I was managing my automation COE, it was completely done by my team, right? I did not go with the partner. In hindsight, I could have done things differently, but I've seen many organizations are partnering, right? What have you seen with customers, and do you think that partners could be introduced at early stage, in the middle stage, or maybe later stage?
Yes. So the latter of what you said. Introducing partners in the early stage is good because you also don't know whether you should be investing in a large COE at that point. And you don't know how much proliferation of automation will actually occur within your organization. So start with an extended arm of a partner who actually helps you deploy. Build the expertise within your organization with some fantastic certification courses and experience hands-on. Do the knowledge transfer, and definitely over time, if you're a large enough organization, you have a healthy roadmap and you have clear goals defined of why you're doing this automation journey, definitely have your own COE.
Okay, that's great. Can you hear me? I see some buffer on my screen. Am I loud and clear?
I can hear you well. Yep.
That's great. That's great. So now you spoke about at the start of your journey, and this is one of the question I'm picking up from the audience, that how do you define low-hanging fruits, right? And I'm just going to add my side of the question as well. That previously low-hanging fruit was something which can be deployed pretty straight up, right? And it was all focused on RPA. But I've seen the maturity changing where that low-hanging fruit, something simple, could be RPA plus more. You did say that you should keep it simple, but with right selection of the vendor where you have more capable technology now, could you go for low-hanging fruit which will have RPA plus IPA?
Absolutely. So when we process identification, as we started with, right, as the first step, if you can define a process which will bring ROI, a tangible ROI, a very significant ROI, and that process does involve even third-party application integration for doing that automation, right? So to give you an example, there are a lot of automation examples today which use WhatsApp as an interface. So the bots behind belong to Automation Anywhere, but the front end for the user is WhatsApp. But the ROI on such for B2C type customers who work directly with their customers, the ROI is fantastic because they don't have impediment in reaching to their customers. WhatsApp is available. Similar examples of automation behind standard chatbot interfaces. Your company might already have a chatbot and is one of the omni-channels which you're using to communicate with your customer. Bring a bot behind it to make the process more efficient behind the chatbot. There you see technology is being integrated. It sounds complex, but it's actually quite simple to implement.
I think, and that's important because I think when we see the customer just looking at, only one part of the process, rather they can, as you said, think bit more long term and see how we can take first step in solving that business problem. Sapna, as you suggested, right, and we and in the opening statement that we are now in unprecedented times with COVID-19 lockdown, right?
Yeah.
Previously, changing the mindset of within an organization was the biggest hurdle, right? Biggest task. Now, with this isolation, home isolation, lack of a better word, are the organized compelled to look at things differently, and is that also helping to change the mindset in terms of how digital transformation, also automation can be done? Are you seeing that mental shift taking place? Are they more open?
Yes, and I would have never liked something like this to make people think, right? But unfortunately it is. And believe it or not, we, at least here in India, right? For example, I know the audience is much beyond, but there are a lot of companies, even banks for that matter, right? In any country out there, never thought of working from home as ever needed. They would actually source their employees even in a way where if somebody was home, there was someone else to do that job. But now even the backup is at home. Everyone is at home, right? So how do I run my organization in such a case? So I have customers over the last couple of weeks who have come and asked, what can you do for us? We need to do things fast. but we need to keep these lights on, right? So from things like activity monitoring, then for example, I don't want to give my employee access to a certain application which is sitting in the data center. I just cannot. My client prevents me from doing it, or because I'm a bank, the government prevents me from doing it. Can that employee still work? But then what I told them is, you have a bot which is sitting in your data center, right? So give the bot enough of massaged and managed data that the bot can do the upload for you. That way you're secure. Your employee is not accessing the application directly, yet the work gets done. So there's honestly a lot, but you see the change in process that we're being forced to think, which could have been done in other scenarios. I'm not saying that just working from home is caused for all alarm, but this situation is forcing everyone to think, and they all are going to be ready to answer that very important question, that if something like this happens again, are we ready?
Yeah. So when you say ready, what is the definition of being ready? Is it BCP ready, or shall we be resilient that we do not have to worry about BCP? Right. So, when I've spoken to a few of the industry leaders and I've asked them, so are you using bots in the current situation to take the pressure off you, right? For example, banking industry, where many governments have made it that the loans, for example, have been waived for 3 to 4 months. In that case, the banks have to work really fast to ensure that there are not multiple reminders going to the customers. Their credit rating is not impacted because the payment is, the EMI is not coming through. So there's a lot of work which needs to be done, right? So the point is that, are we making it's good to make the organization more resilient, and would digital worker will help in making organization more resilient? And if that is the case, do we even need BCP?
Good question. So I think what it means to be ready is more about resilience. BCP is a definition.
Consequence.
Yes, exactly. It's a consequence, and it's one of the factors of being resilient. Resiliency, I think, is very important, and you brought up a great example where because EMIs, relief on EMIs, or for that matter, interest rates being reduced, so people are redoing their mortgages. A flurry of expectation of loans being again revamped through the whole system because interest rates have been reduced. So a lot of work being expected there, but those employees are still at home, right? So even governing bodies are rethinking, how can I go completely digital? If a situation happens where a person cannot come to sign or prove that he or she is the person whom he or she claims to be, how do I revamp this process? So there are changes happening at various levels. In the interim, there's a lot that automation can definitely help. So we're working with our customers to make things faster, process faster. We're working with them on, as I told you, monitoring tools, setup tools, things of that sort.
So you spoke about faster just now, right? And we were having a conversation day before yesterday on this particular point, where you're saying that previously the turnaround time of building the bots was expected to be around 3 to 4 weeks, but now it's been shrunk to 1 week, right? People want the bots now, right? How are we responding to that? Because in the end, it's the same technology, right? We've got the same set of people. So what has changed that we're able to reduce the duration from 3 weeks to 1 week? And it could be external environment as well.
Right. So yes, now that you mentioned that, there was a customer, I was on a call last week. They said, we need this up and running in 3 days. So yes, the requirements has definitely changed. And we are looking at tools we have. One is definitely our Botstore. So we have introduced a bot security framework, which uncanny timing, but it's really bots which have gone through standard malware, static, dynamic testing, as well as penetration testing. So really bots which you can download and tweak a bit to suit your environment and start using. That definitely reduces the time for deployment. And honestly, at this point with our customers, we're really putting all the workforce we have, all the talents we have to help them. because this is not a time to do business. This is a time to help.
Of course.
And we are
I think,
helping all our customers.
no, certainly. And do you think that cloud-based offering goes a long way as well in terms of responding because they do not have to worry about setting things up, and we have a automation as a service which can help them to switch on and switch off the hotkey to start the bots? Are you saying that is also being utilized?
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. So today, I don't have to do any on-prem installation for my customers. They're up and running within few minutes because we offer RPA as a service. So it's not an IaaS model where we are deploying something on a VM. We are taking care of all the cloud operations, the infrastructure, and all they have to do is start building bots. So that and the combination of the Botstore gives them really faster time to deploy as compared to any other solution.
That is great. And you also see mindset change where previously we had to go through these hoops of infosec and compliance and all of that. So the organizations are far more nimble. The reason I ask is because as we saw that many of our attendees are about to start their automation journey, right?
Yeah.
And we want to basically give them this message that the journey can be embarked on from into this scenario from work from home as well. So are you seeing that many of your the customers we are working with, they are still excited about going ahead with the automation journey, even though we're working from home and it has got no implication on that?
Absolutely. And I think cloud gives a fantastic option because and remember, when we are offering RPA as a service and we take on the infrastructure, we also take on the responsibility of security, right?
Yeah.
So accessing this setup from anywhere, whether you're at home or anywhere else, in a secure way, really gives them the flexibility to not stop their roadmap of automation. That is continuous. And now that certain things which were lower on the roadmap have gone up in priority, they're still able to, in a very fast way, continue this journey and accelerate it.
That's great. On that note, I will pass on. Can we last poll question? Please. And then, Supta, I'll have a quick conversation with you on the closing remarks. What are the key takeaways you think our attendees or our listeners should basically keep in mind? Yeah. So the question we have is, let me bring it up on my screen as well. How would you like us to interact post the webinar? An advisory workshop, develop use case, build a pilot, help scale automation? And I'm just going to be a bit more bold here and put another option there that if you have any need right now, immediate need with COVID lockdown as well, please reach out to us. We have got a dedicated team. We have got a dedicated response team. We've got dedicated bots available to help our customers or whoever is in the need in that situation. So, Sapna, if you also would like to comment on that point.
No, absolutely. This is a time to reach out and ask for help. And we have been helping a lot of customers. This is not a time to talk business. It's really about ensuring that things run and people are protected. And when we say people are protected, both from a health and a financial perspective. So really keeping our 2 cents of contribution to the economy. We would love to help, so do reach out.
Yeah, and it could be industry agnostic, could be in life science, public sector, banking, insurance. We are currently helping all our customers in that regard. So please reach out to us should you need any immediate help to manage your business or cost or operations, and we are more than happy to help you. On that note, can I please get the response to the poll, please? That's up your alley, Sapna. It's a advisory workshop and develop use case, right? So it's, I think, identifying and developing the use case is still a bit of the area where people need some help. It's also advisory workshop because they want to start their journey, and maybe they might, it might be, these are confusing times, right?
Yes.
That's why. So yeah. Okay. So we are almost at the end of the time. What would be the closing remarks for you? What do you think? What should be the takeaways for our audience from here?
So I think folks, first of all, again, really appreciate you spending your 1 hour of your time with us. And hopefully this was useful. A key message I want to share with you today is we spoke about the need for digital transformation from a business perspective. But it looks like it's necessary from, unfortunately, many other reasons. And if we as humans and humanity want to keep things up and running and have the best of possible lives that we could, we really have to adopt technology. And I'm not talking just about automation. Technology is a fantastic tool that we have developed and we need to use. So think big, stay safe, and go be great.
That's interesting. So I think my three takeaways from your presentation and discussion with you, Sapna, is keep it simple. You said that, go for the simple use cases for now. Think big is exactly what I wrote. And one of the more technical thing is have the right governance and keep that, and the target operating model, because it helps to keep the journey for long term, right? So I think that's really great. So on that note, Sapna, I really appreciate your time. We always have candid conversation in office, but it was the first time that we had the opportunity to discuss what we usually do at office in front of the live audience. It was a first experience for us as well. So more than happy to receive any feedback from our audience. Please do let us know if there's any questions we were unable to answer. If you've got any new questions, please post it on the page. You will also get a recording of this session. So if you want to hear it again, please feel free to do so, or you can share it with your peers in the industry. So on that note, I'll sign off. Be safe and go be great. Thank you, Sapna, once again.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.